I've passed over 20 prop firm challenges and I currently hold over $600,000 in funded capital, and I can confidently say that the reason why most traders fail their prop firms is not because they don't know how to trade, but because they don't understand prop firm psychology. You see, the thing is, most traders approach passing a prop firm challenge just like they would trading a live account. But the reality is, it's a completely different game. And until you understand the rules of this other game and learn how to skew them in your personal favor, you are never going to be profitable on prop firms. So today I'm going to be going through my exact prop firm psychology, as well as giving you guys a few tips and tricks that most traders don't know about that are going to help you pass the prop firm accounts quicker and hold on to them for longer. Now, I've got my trusty little whiteboard here and I'm going to break it down for you, but let me start off with one of the mindset shifts that actually allowed me to go and remove all of the fear I had around prop firms, which then led to me getting more results and a lot faster. And that is the limited risk mindset. So if you really think about it, when you are trading a prop firm, you have a completely limited risk. And that means the amount that you paid for the funded account right here, let's say that the funded account that you bought was $250. The amount that you paid for that funded account is your maximum risk. So what that means is you are not trading a $200,000 account, you're actually trading a $250 account, because that is the maximum risk that you have on the line. And in fact, even when you've bought the account, that $250 is gone anyway, regardless of whether you pass or fail. So you should realistically be using that to your advantage to benefit your mindset. Now, a lot of traders, when they get onto a funded account, it will be the biggest numbers they've ever seen. Suddenly you go from a $100 live account to now you can trade 100K funded, and you're seeing $1,000 in drawdown, $2,000 in drawdown, and you believe that it's real money because the numbers on the screen start to affect you. But this is where this limited risk mindset comes into play, because if you reinforce this in your brain, you are going to be able to take away all of that fear and all of the greed that you're going to see with these big swings in profit and loss, and you're actually going to be able to focus on the pure bare bones trading. But here's what most traders fail to understand. When you understand the limited risk mindset, you can then apply that to your challenge and to when you are funded. So when you're in the challenge phase, what you need to actually understand is you can actually remove all emotional detachment from that challenge. So you can essentially remove your emotional detachment and actually not care about the outcome, because essentially, as long as you are buying an account that you can afford to lose, and this is why I always recommend buying an account that is small enough in size to where you're not going to be upset if you lose it. For example, if you have $1,000 in the bank and a 200K funded costs you $900, you're going to be gutted if you lose that. But if you go ahead and buy a 10K funded for $50, it's going to be much less of an impact on you. So if you can remove that emotional detachment by saying, first of all, this is purely a challenge account and there's actual no real money on the line other than what I've paid, and essentially understand that you are still using risk management by buying a funded account which is not too large for your bank balance, that is going to give you already a head start before we've even got into the video. Now, when you're funded, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to jump into this towards the end of the video, but essentially when you are funded, we're going to change our perception on risk in order to essentially keep this funded for a much longer period of time and trying to milk as much money out of that one funded account as you possibly can. Now, before we get into the real bread and butter of the video, I want to just mention one more concept that actually can change a trader's life when it comes to passing a funded account. Now, when I first started trading a funded account, we had something called time limits. So you had a 30-day window to pass that funded account. Now, talking about this now seems absolutely archaic, to the point where you would actually be forced to trade a certain amount of time before that funded account would be failed. And now, obviously, that has been completely removed from the game. So now we have absolutely zero time limits. And what that means is you are under zero time obligation to pass your funded account. The only time pressure that there is on you passing that funded account is the time pressure that you've put on yourself. Since prop firms remove time limits, there is literally zero reason for you to rush prop firms, especially if it's one of your first that you're trying to pass. Now, when we get further into the game and you've got multiple prop firms and maybe you're reinvesting capital from your payouts, or maybe you're essentially at a position where you can afford to lose these prop firm fees, then yeah, go ahead and risk a little bit higher. But especially when you're starting off, there's zero reason for you to be rushing into the game. But let's head straight into the tips. So my tip number one, in order to actually go ahead and help you pass these prop firm accounts more successfully and sometimes quicker, is going to be something called variable risk management. Now, variable risk management is essentially using the understanding of the rules, the buffer, and the drawdown that you're given on the prop firm to your advantage. I'm going to explain how that works with two examples now. The first example is going to be using a forex prop firm with traditional models. So let's say this forex prop has 5% daily drawdown, and it has 10% max drawdown. And as well as that, you have an 8% profit target, okay? Now, what we're gonna actually look at here is how do we adapt our risk depending on what trades we've taken. So obviously, let's imagine that we're using a fixed risk here of 1% risk. In fact, yeah, let's use 1%. Now, what's gonna happen here is, let's imagine we take a trade, we take two different trades here. Trade one, or situation number one, is you take a trade and it's actually a winner for 1%. Now, on that day, what you actually have right now is you have, instead of a 5% daily drawdown here, because you've taken a winner, you've now got an extra 1% added to your daily drawdown. So now you have 6%. So if you wanted to, and if you were a little bit more risk averse, you could essentially go ahead and risk a little bit more on a trade on the same day, understanding that you have some more buffer to play with. Now, I'm not necessarily saying to risk 6% or whatever straight away, but the point is, if you utilize this, you can risk more and increase the risk on your trades without increasing the risk that you're actually going to go ahead and fail the account. So what I would do in this situation is, the next trade that I took, maybe we'd be looking at a 2% or even a 3%, because now we understand that actually the drawdown hasn't increased because it's not, a trailing drawdown like with a futures prop firm. So we can afford to actually risk a little bit more. And this also plays out if you're risking a lot higher. Let's say you were risking 3% a trade. Imagine that you're risking 3%. You take a win, you're now up 3%, and now you've got 8% daily drawdown left. So you could go ahead and risk 5% on that. And if you win that trade with a 1-to-1, now what's going to happen is you're 8% in profit, and you've passed that account in one day. So simple, but using that little adjustment on risk is going to be massively beneficial for you. Now, vice versa, the same thing is going to apply if you lose a trade. So let's imagine now in this situation, what actually happens is we go ahead and lose a trade. Now, what we're going to do here, let's say that we're risking actually 2% on this. So what we're going to go ahead and do, now we are down minus 2%, and we can quite clearly tell that we only have 3% of our daily drawdown left. So what we're going to go and do, we're going to go and not take another trade for the rest of the day, because the fact that that drawdown is essentially coming closer and closer brings you a much higher chance of going into tilt, emotional phases. If you take another trade and lose, you're going to be extremely close to your daily drawdown, and there's no need to risk coming anywhere near that daily drawdown. If you are failing a prop firm due to the daily drawdown, there is something wrong with you. You should never, ever, ever hit your daily drawdown, because that is very simply, you are risking too much. If you ever hit your daily drawdown, you know that you've over-risked and over-traded. So that is your main number one problem if you're hitting daily drawdown. But the main fix, like I just said, the moment you lose a trade on a forex prop firm, you are done for the day. Simple. By the way, if you do want to go ahead and get a prop firm that has that pricing model where you can essentially pass it a lot faster with traditional forex prop firm models, you can go ahead and use code SG at Alpha Capital Group, and that is going to get you 20% off all evaluation. Now that's an extremely good deal. ACG have paid me out every single time without fail. As you can see here, I highly recommend them. So go over and grab yourself an account with ACG with 20% off. It's an absolute steal. Now, tip number 2 that I have is going to change the way you focus on prop firms. And it's essentially going to remove some pressure from yourself and allow you to actually see prop firms as a learning experience rather than something that is a fail or a pass. Because putting these words fail or pass is essentially black and white. It's either you're a good trader or a bad trader, when in reality, that is completely not true. And what we're going to actually do is we're going to say that each evaluation is going to give you one learning experience. So we're going to have one learning experience from each evaluation. Now, what that essentially means is every time you either pass or fail one, you're going to go and take something away from that. You're going to make sure that you've learned something from it. So like I said earlier, if you hit your daily drawdown, that's going to equal an over risk for you, right? Very, very simple. Risk is too high. Now you need to put your risk down. For example, if you go ahead and hit your overall drawdown, then you need to figure out what's wrong with your strategy, because essentially, if something's gone wrong with your overall drawdown, that means you've taken a lot of trades in a row, but you didn't over risk because you didn't hit that daily drawdown. So you need to go and reevaluate your strategy. Now, that is essentially just a few examples of what we can actually do and take from each prop firm. Now, you might be something else, there might be a different lesson, like you need to be stopping trading at a certain time, or maybe you're struggling with the emotions or the money, whatever it is, just take one lesson away from each evaluation. And that leads into my next point as well, which is give yourself an opportunity to learn everything once. Now, what that means is learn everything once. So what that means is you are allowed to make every mistake once. You're allowed to hit your daily drawdown and over risk once. You're allowed to fail because of your emotions once. You're allowed to be revenge trading once. But every single time that you do that and blow a prop firm, you are gonna go away and go, okay, write this down. I've learned my lesson. Over trading does not work. Okay, I've learned my lesson. Over risking doesn't work, or whatever the issue might be that you've been facing. Give yourself one opportunity to learn that, and that way you see these mistakes that you're making as actually a learning experience that you're going to become better from, rather than actually getting sucked in to that pass or fail mindset that the props are giving you, which is essentially telling you you're either a bad trader or a good trader. And if you're putting yourself in the bad trader category, it's never gonna work for you because you're already in a bad psychological state from the get-go. Now, tip number 3 is a massively important one. This one is gonna literally remove any poor fear and greed that you have surrounding your balance or passing the account or hitting these profit targets. And that is balance disassociation. So we're gonna essentially remove any focus that we have on balance. And I'm gonna give you a few reasons and a few different ways that traders do this that's essentially gonna allow you to eliminate these problems from the get-go. And after that, I'm gonna give you the solution that actually changed everything for me, because this was something that I struggled with a lot, and this one solution was genuinely a game changer. Now, the first way that traders focus on their balance too much is they focus on that profit target. So imagine a lot of prop firm dashboards, they look like this, okay? You've got 0% profit, and then you've got your 8% profit target over here. Now, most traders will be checking their dashboard every single day after they take a trade, and they can see the balance going up or see essentially the progress bar increasing towards actually passing the account. Now, what this does is two things. First of all, it gives you a focus on the monetary value, and prop firms do this on purpose to actually take your focus away from your trading, because essentially what happens then is you're seeing the P&L rather than seeing the market. So tip number 1 to avoid that is going to be stop checking your dashboard and stop checking your balance, but primarily stop checking your dashboard, because you don't need to see these statistics. You don't need to see them after the fact. Yeah, go ahead and review your statistics and see how you did. But during, you don't need to be thinking about this, because it's only going to put you in a negative mindset. It's only going to focus you on the money, and that's exactly what you don't need. Now, the second thing that traders do, let's imagine this trader right here has got all the way towards here, okay? Let's say that he is now at this phase in his challenge. Maybe he's made 6.8%. Okay, so he's 1.2% away from passing. What ends up happening immediately after this is he gets in a trade and he goes, okay, he needs 1.2%. And before he even gets in the trade, he's already thinking he needs 1.2%. Now, his logical TP maybe would only be at 1%. However, because he's so close to passing the account, what he's gonna do is stretch it out and put it to 1.2%, which might not follow his strategy, but he thinks he can pass it in this one trade, and that's gonna be a lot better. And then what happens is, every single time, and this has happened to me before, every single time what happens is, logical TP gets hit, okay, and then price rejects. Immediately, price begins to reject. And what happens there is you either get hit break even and try and chase that money back, because now you were so close to passing, you would have only been $200 off, but now you're still 1.2% away. Or a lot of traders will just let that trade run to SL and hoping it comes back towards their logical TP, hoping it's just a pullback. SL gets hit, and then you can actually go ahead and fail the account from there. In fact, I will tell you this for free right now. I have had a prop firm challenge that I've taken, and I've been $100 off trading, and it was a 100K account, so that was 0.1%. And actually, I failed that account for this exact reason. I was literally 1.2% away from passing. I moved my I moved my take profit to 1.2%. 1.1% was hit, which was where my logical TP should have been. Price came back to break even. I didn't let it go to stop loss, but price came back to break even. And from that point onwards, I was on complete tilt and ended up failing the account. So this can genuinely happen, and it's very much not a good feeling. So here is actually how to avoid that. The way to avoid that in the easiest way possible is by investing in a copy trader. Now, this is actually how I passed my first ever prop firm. And I actually didn't know I'd passed it until I got an email from Alpha Capital Group, because what happened was I had set up my live account with a small balance. I'd essentially just set up a small balance live account, and I'd then gone over to essentially a trade copier. I'm not affiliated with one, so I'm not giving any names, but you can find them on Google. And I'd gone, okay, each trade is a 1% risk, and essentially copy TP and SL. And I actually made it so that it would not manually close when I do, okay? And then what happened was, I ended up taking a lot of positions, obviously, throughout like a month or however long it was. And one day I got an email from Alpha Capital Group, and it was a one-phase challenge that I'd passed the account. And I was like, oh, incredible. I've passed the account, that's great. And yeah, I didn't even know I'd done it. And because I didn't know I'd done it, I hadn't got to the point where I was going, okay, I'm only $100 away, or I'm only $1,000 away, or whatever it is. I hadn't even thought about the balance. And then one day the account was passed, and it was the easiest thing ever, because there was zero psychological issues, because I hadn't even logged into the MetaTrader on that account. I literally went straight from the email that Alpha Capital sent me, and literally went straight away and said, okay, let me put this in this copy trader. Didn't even log into the MetaTrader. Absolutely incredible. Now, the fact also that Alpha Capital Group allows that copy trading is absolutely incredible as well. They are such a good firm. So again, I'm going to mention their link is down in the description, top link in the description. Make sure you go ahead and click that if you do want an account, and then use code SG for that 20% off. But what happens after you pass the account? So now you go ahead and you go over from a challenge all the way to your live account. And everybody's psychology starts to struggle at this point as well, because they now think they've got live capital, and essentially there's money on the line because they're so close to that payout. And the first thing I want to remind you of, the live account that you are given, the so-called live account, is still a demo account, okay? It's still demo funds, and you are not trading any differently to you were before. So don't think about any more slippage on a live account or whatever it may be. You're still trading the exact same platform, so do not worry about that whatsoever. Secondly, you need to shift your mentality, okay? Because now there's no profit target, but there is still the daily drawdown. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna drop our risk to maximum, okay, 1%. And the thing right here that I wanna put into your head straight away is, when you are on a live account, especially if it's one of your first ones, base hits, okay? The concept of base hits essentially means base hits instead of a home run. Just like in baseball, you are not going for one huge trade, okay? That is not what we're going for. We're not going for also 10% payouts or anything like that. What we are gonna do is we're gonna simply accumulate some base hits, and then we're gonna go ahead and actually request the moment we can, okay? Immediately when you can, whether your prop firm has conditions or not. For example, on ACG, there's no real conditions. The moment you're in profit, a certain amount, you can request your payout. So let's say you get a trade and it's 1% in profit, okay? You're gonna request that straight away. Take your first payout, because that is a win, right? And then that's money on the line. As well as that, obviously, after you get a certain amount of payouts, you're gonna get the refund, so you wanna be securing that as well. But there's no reason to try and either build a buffer or to try and milk the prop firm for more money, because two things is gonna happen. First of all, if you luckily do build up a massive amount on the payout, there is a higher chance that that payout is gonna get declined. Secondly, what is gonna happen is, maybe you got to 10K, luckily 10% or whatever, and you go ahead and don't request, and you try and build it up a bit higher, you take a loss, you're back to 8. What's gonna happen then is you're gonna go, okay, I can make it back up to 10, and then I'll request. And then you take another loss, and then another loss, and then by the time you know it, since that daily drawdown's crept up a little bit and the overall drawdown, you eventually lost your account, okay? And There's no real reason to do that. You shouldn't be going into a position where you're doing this. Consistent payouts are very, very important. Think about it this way. If you can get bi-weekly payouts, which you can on Alpha, then you're getting 1% a week on a 100K account is 2K a month, right? And that's not bad if it's your first payout. If you go and get a 200K account, 1% a week, 1% every 2 weeks is 2K every 2 weeks, which is 4K a month, which immediately is probably more than you're earning now, right? So why would you try and milk it for way more than you need to? And this is where we go on to the final point that I want to know, okay? And this is the absolute monster, okay? For when you have passed your accounts, you need to think about capital growth. Okay, so capital growth with your prop firms is nothing to do with essentially the scaling plans that the prop firms have. It's all to do with requesting payouts, reinvesting them, and essentially scaling your capital. Now, what we're going to do is request, scale by buying more challenges, pass them, and then repeat, okay? And this means now we're going ahead, maybe your first prop firm is a 50K, okay? You're gonna get that 1% payout, which is gonna be 500 bucks. Take away the 90%, which is 400 bucks that you're left with. Now you're gonna go ahead and buy maybe 100K, okay? And then you get a 100K account for the 400 bucks. And now you've got the opportunity to have 150K in funding. So when you take your next payout, that's gonna now equal $1,500. So you can see here quite clearly, even a 1% payout is scaling as your capital scales. The goal of prop firms is not to milk one account for a seriously high percentage payout. The goal of prop firms is to get a serious amount of capital and take your 0.5% payout or your 1% payout or your 2% payout. But take those small payouts because as your capital grows, those fucking payouts are gonna grow massively too. And the same applies with taking this and moving it over to your live account because at the end of the day, a prop firm for you should be a tool. It is not the end result, it's just a tool along your journey, okay? So your prop is always that tool on the way to the end goal, which is a large live account. Now you should be essentially, if you're not investing into more props with your payouts, you should be putting them straight from your prop account into a large live account on a brokerage so that you can finally end up trading with complete freedom. Now, finally, I want to bring it back to passing challenges just one more time to give you a final tip right here. And that tip is a little bit similar to what I said earlier, but it is having multiple accounts. Now, having multiple evaluations is going to be the cheat code to your success. And the reason being, if you can afford one 100K challenge, you can then go ahead and afford 3 or 4 25Ks, okay? But now, let's say that you've got 4 25Ks. What's actually gonna go ahead and happen is you've now got a 400% higher chance of passing one of these 25Ks than you do of passing this one 100K. And what's then gonna happen if you use the scaling plan that I just mentioned to you is you can go ahead and pass one of those 25Ks, get a 1% payout for 250 bucks, and now guess what you can do? You can either buy 4 more 100Ks or you can go ahead and buy another 100K. And now look what you can do. You can go ahead and buy 4 more 25Ks or you can go ahead and actually reinvest in that initial 100K that you wanted anyway, but now it's risk-free. So you see here how we're starting slow, building up and using it to scale and giving yourselves a larger approach to actually going ahead and trading, essentially multiple prop firms, is going to actually, first of all, give you a higher percentage chance of passing them, but also it's going to do exactly what we spoke about earlier and remove any psychological attachment that you've got to these evaluations, because now instead of needing to pass one, you've got 4 that you can pass. So if you blow one, it's not that big of a deal and you can move on to the next one without feeling like your world is ending. So to recap, here's exactly what you're gonna do to give yourself the best chance of passing a prop firm fast and also keeping it for the long run. So first of all, we wanna go ahead and use the shotgun approach I just mentioned. Buy multiple accounts that are smaller than the biggest one that you can afford to give yourself the highest chance of passing. That is also going to help with number 2, which is removing any personal attachment to that funded account. The more attached you are to passing this funded account, the higher the likelihood is that you're going to get emotional and actually go ahead and fail it. And number 3, variable risk. Like I explained earlier, we're going to be adapting our risk depending on the amount of drawdown that we have available for the prop firm. Now, it's going to depend on which prop you're trading, futures, forex, etc. But you can work it out for yourself. Use the same principle that I taught you earlier, and that is going to be applicable. Now, after you pass the account, in fact, in between these 2 phases, Do not go ahead and buy one of those plaques that's your funded certificate printed out in glass. That's going to give you too much emotional attachment, and passing a funded account is not a big deal, okay? So many people pass funded accounts and then don't get payouts. So why the hell would you go and pay someone for a funded account plaque when realistically you should be removing your attachment and you should be seeing this as now a normality for you? It's nothing to celebrate. The payouts is what you should be celebrating. But after you do get that account passed, you need to move on to actually how you're going to get those payouts. Now, base hits only. We're not going for monster trades. Take your 0.5% profits and then go ahead and take your 1% payouts. Super easy, but keep it small and consistent, like I said right here. That way, you're going to fly under the prop firm's radar. You're not going to go ahead and flag them up with a massive payout that they're then going to go ahead and try and deny. And you're going to allow yourself to actually get cash flow coming in. Finally, use that cash flow from step number 2 to go ahead and actually scale in order to actually build your capital more, so that when you are still getting those 1% payouts, they are going to be massively, massively higher in monetary value. Now remember, it's not about being the best trader, it's about understanding which battle you're fighting and preparing yourself best for that specific situation. Most traders fail because they're fighting the wrong psychological battle, but once you align yourself with the psychology you need and the rules that you're actually playing under, passing becomes inevitable. Now, if you want to get the exact framework that I use to achieve $600,000 in funding, I'm hosting a live webinar which is going to go through my strategy and exactly how I do what I've just told you. But if you want to join that, click the link to join my WhatsApp group down in the description, and I'm going to leave the details inside there. Other than that, drop a like on the video and I'll see you in the next one.